Kalimera. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking to the Archons for inviting me to this conference. I am honored and very much pleased. Today, my presentation is about the place of religion in a secular state, and more particularly, the place of religious minorities within the state, within a secular state. And my particular answer to the question written in my presentation, the title of my presentation, are religious minorities compatible with a secular Turkish state, is a yes. And I would like to explain why I think that religious minorities are compatible. But to do that, I will first begin with some conceptual discussion to clarify what secularism means. What is religious freedom? What is freedom of conscience? More than anything, diversity characterizes 21st century societies. They are marked by ethnic, religious, racial, ideological, moral, and sexual differences. While some people welcome these differences and see them as a source of richness, others feel threatened by this phenomenon. Those who feel threatened have two options before them. They either attempt to eradicate these differences or learn to live with it. As a matter of fact, the concept of neutrality is promoted as the proper reaction for a state in the face of diversity. A state which does not want to discriminate among its citizens on the basis of ethnic, religious, racial, and other identifications such as gender or sexual preferences, choose to remain in equal distance to all individuals with these different backgrounds and different identities. Why would a state want not to discriminate among its citizens? There may be at least three answers to this question. First, state may just want to keep the peace. It may just want to avoid civil strife. No trouble, we don't want trouble. So we shouldn't discriminate so that people who feel discriminated will not rebel against us. Second, state may want to keep justice or may want to be just, have equity as a founding principle. So treat all differences equally. And third, maybe most importantly, the state may want to respect, and should, of course, respect the freedom of religion and conscience of its individual citizens. I think that in this context, secularism is another concept that is very closely associated with the concept of neutrality, in that they both emerge as a response to diversity. More specifically, secularism is a response to religious diversity and associated potential conflict caused by that diversity. In the face of religious diversity, the state, which doesn't want to create civil strife, or which wants to respect freedom of conscience and religion, or which simply just wants to be just towards its citizens, may choose to stay neutral towards all religions. The state may achieve this purpose of staying neutral towards religious groups by either aiming complete separation of religion and state, or by supporting pluralism, which Monsma and Soper call it principled pluralism. The first approach is exemplified by the United States of America. In this model, the state neither supports nor hinders religion. In this way, it is argued that the state remains neutral. But does it really remain neutral? For example, by insisting that religion should not be brought in the school curricula, isn't the state siding with the scientific worldview, which is another belief system and which is not necessarily objective? So there are concerns of neutrality with respect to this understanding of treatment of religious diversity. On the other hand, the second approach, the principled pluralism, can be found in a neighboring country, Netherlands. The Dutch answer this question, that is, how to stay neutral in response to religious diversity, by saying that by complete separation of religion and state, unfortunately, we do not remain neutral for the reasons that I just explained with respect to the United States case. That is, if we are going to be genuinely neutral to all religious groups, perhaps we need to support all of them so that we will not favor any of them in particular. Because in the modern era, at least in the education, the states are providing their citizens education. And most of the states provide in the West this education, at least in the secular or scientific method way. So in order to be just and respectful to the freedom of conscience and religion of all citizens, states should support not only the secular education system, but all other belief systems. So Catholic schools, Protestant schools, Muslim schools, they all are supported in this system. A third way of responding to religious diversity in particular, and to religion in general, can be named laïcité, the French way. This model can be seen as a response to religion itself, in fact, more than to the religious diversity. This approach finds its roots in the Enlightenment tradition and values, and more particularly in the faith in the reason. Religion, according to French positivist approach, for example, can be replaced by science, should be replaced by science. For this state of mind, religion is something that needed to be kept under strict control of the reason. Religion, with all its appearances, should be taken out of public sphere and must be confined to the individual conscience. Hence, Charles Taylor calls this method, this model, as the control model. Now, let me turn to Turkey. The historical experience of Turkey can be divided into two periods. And my dear friend Mustafa Akyol this morning has given us a very illustrative description and presentation with respect to this experience, historical experience. So I will just briefly mention, and I will not go into details of these different periods. The pre-Republican period is Ottoman era, And first there was the millet system until the mid-19th century at least, and according to which all different groups had their autonomy in their civil and religious affairs. However, there was no equality. There was a limited toleration which gave believers of different faiths freedom to experience, observe their religion, but there was also a relationship of superiority between hierarchical relationship. And also, from a liberal perspective, another problematic issue was that there was no right to exit from one's religious group, especially if you are a Muslim. Of course, Christians were always welcomed to convert to Islam, but it was not the case for a Muslim to convert to Christianity or to any other religion. So, but by the foundation of Republic, this was past history, right? And Republic claimed to be a secular state. And they picked the French model out of these three different models that I previously mentioned, American, Dutch, and French. They picked up the French model. Why? Maybe one reason can be found in the educational history of the founding elite of Turkey, which was led by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. They were educated in the French style. They went to military academies. They went to France. Atatürk may not have gone to France himself, but he spoke French and educated in the French style. And many of the Ottoman intellectuals in the late 19th century went to France, spent time there, saw the French way, and came back with the ideas of French Enlightenment. So they thought that religion is something that should be always under control. Reason must lead us. They believed in reason, science, and progress. The society would progress under the light of reason and science. All appearances of religion so must be taken out of the public sphere. Thus, we had revolutions, devrimler, kılık kıyafet devrimi, the revolution for dressing. That is, you cannot wear religious clothes in the public sphere. We had the şapka devrimi, hat revolution. You cannot have a fez anymore, but you need to have a Western style hat. This is revolution, and this is sanctioned by law. If you wear a religious garment, a religious hat, you are in trouble. But only the religious persons, that is imams, for example, or priests, were allowed to wear those clothing. And also, the education system, by the revolution or by the law, Tevhid-i Tedrisat, that is uniting all sorts of education under the control of the state. So no more religious education, no more privately based religious education, such as madrasas, right? It will be under the control of the state, and the education will be designed along the lines of science, scientific thinking. In fact, it was also taught that we need something to bind the society together. And religion has been doing this in the past centuries. But now we believe in science, and we can no longer give this important role to religion. So it should be replaced by science, but at the same time by a belief system. Then here comes Kemalism as an ideology. Kemalism, named after Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, is an ideology in the Enlightenment tradition, and it has some basic features. Turkish nationalism is one of the features, main pillars. The other is the statism in the both geographical sense or economic sense, exaltation of the state. And thirdly, strict control of religion or secularism, as they said. And this was under full progress until at least 1950, when Turkey, for the first time, changed its government through free and fair elections. But the system did not change by just changing the government in Turkey. Anyways, at the discourse level, it was argued that laicite or laiklik meant the separation of the state and religion. However, in practice, it has meant the control of religion by the state. With this purpose in mind, the Directorate of Religious Affairs was founded. For the founding elite, the interpretation of religion and its public practice was something too important to be left to civil society. The Directorate would interpret religion and control its practice through state-employed imams. So today in Turkey there are about 75,000 registered mosques. So that means there are at least 75,000 imams paid by the taxpayers. In this understanding, there is no room for neutrality. In Turkey, the Directorate of Religious Affairs promotes a particular religion, Sunni Hanefi Islam. As Mr. Doğan Bermek yesterday indicated, there is no, for example, representation of Alevis in this institution. In this sense, despite the discourse that Turkey is a secular state and there is strict separation of religion and state, one can say that there is no separation of state and religion in Turkey, and there is an established religion, in fact, in Turkey, Sunni Islam. However, I must indicate that, as mentioned yesterday, since yesterday, the members of this majority religion do not have freedom of religion and conscience either. Due to the view of religion of the founding elite and their positivist ideology, all religious expressions must be taken out of the public sphere, as I indicated before. Thus, women cannot come to public service, for example, wearing a headscarf. Let alone being a civil servant, they cannot attend university wearing a headscarf. For example, I have students, I come across with students in the university campus wearing wigs, unfortunately, because they cannot reveal their hair, right? They have a headscarf, but with their headscarf, they cannot enter campus. So they put a wig on top of the scarf. So that's very unfortunate. Men, for example, cannot grow religious style beard as civil servants. They cannot enter certain publicly financed facilities, for example, military bases. For example, a couple of times I also experienced this. Even though I do not have a religious style beard, I was just turned away from some military facilities, because sometimes our friends have wedding ceremonies in these hotels, military hotels, ordu evleri, and you get invitation. So you are just out of respect and love, you are going to this service, the wedding, but the soldier there says, no, man, you cannot enter with this beard. Go away. So even though we are publicly financing these institutions, they are telling us that we cannot enter. Alevis, on the other hand, are not represented, as I indicated, and their places of worship, cem evleri, does not have legal status, and they cannot get state funding. And their numbers is not small. They are between 15 million to 20 million, as Doğan Bermek indicated yesterday. Another group, Jaferis, Azeri-Iranian Shiites, they are called. Their number is around 500,000. And their mosques are not legally recognized, so they cannot get any funding. Their imams do not get also funding. Christian minority groups, such as Arameans or Protestants, their places of worship do not have legal standing, and they do not get any funding. And three religious groups, Greek Orthodox, Armenian Orthodox, and the Jews. Thanks to Lausanne, and wrong interpretation of Lausanne, of course, they have some privileges. They are legally recognized, right? However, they also suffer from the state practices. They cannot have their freedom of religion and conscience. Their properties are seized illegally. And so yesterday, Laki Bey indicated that the right to property is directly related with the respect of freedom of religion and conscience. So many obstacles in front of them as well. So this is not secularism. If secularism is a means that makes state neutral towards all belief systems, religious and non-religious, and guarantees the basic freedom of religion and conscience. In Turkey, in its current form, laïcité neither makes the state neutral nor guarantees freedom of religion and conscience. This should be changed. But the question is, how? Of the two models, complete separation model is better than French model. That is, American way is better than French way. However, there is also concerns, as I mentioned, with respect to neutrality. You are taking religion out of the public sphere or from education, but how about the scientific method? Is it totally objective? Isn't it also a belief system? So you are not neutral in this respect. It seems that principled pluralism model of Holland is better in this respect than the American way. However, as a classical liberal person, I must tell that it is the responsibility of individuals to interpret the religion, and the state should not interpret religion for them. I also think that it is the responsibility of individuals to pay for the costs of associated with observing their religion. Similarly, teaching the religion, which is a natural result of freedom of religion and conscience, freely teaching the religion, is also responsibility of the believers. Paying the cost of that education is their responsibility as well. Thus, state should not restrict individuals to observe, express their religious beliefs in the public sphere. All citizens should be treated equally. However, all costs related with religion must be borne by believers. This is my ideal case. So I will take here an Aristotelian approach, saying both the ideal that I am in favor and also the second best approach. This is the ideal. The state should stay out of religion. However, as I indicated earlier, in the modern world, in the nation-state era, states are so willing to shape the minds of their citizens, to educate them. So they wouldn't be willing to give up this privilege. So as long as the state gives education, and many times they do it in the scientific way or objective way, there should be also, I believe, there is legitimate right by the believers to ask for state funding for their education, religious education. If the state is teaching the kids a secular education, then religious groups who want to educate their children according to their belief systems have a legitimate right to claim state funding in this respect. So, with respect to Turkish Directorate of Religious Affairs, Diyanet İşleri Başkanlığı, I think ideally there is no room, there shouldn't be an institution interpreting religion for the believers. Believers should do it themselves, either separately, individually, or many times by community, by jamaat, right? Because usually human beings come together and observe their religious beliefs together in cooperation and with solidarity. So they should be able to do it in their own way. However, in the current case, it seems that in Turkey, the Directorate of Religious Affairs will not be abolished in the short run. Then all religious groups, I think, have legitimate claim to get funding from this institution, including also Christian, like Greek Orthodox, Armenian Orthodox, Aramees, all these Protestants. If this institution exists, then I think for the sake of equality, neutrality, and respect for freedom of religion and conscience, all these groups have a legitimate right for state funding. And also with respect to education, as I said. In Turkey, the state education is a secular system, even though there is compulsory course on the religion and moral knowledge. And, but in general, the education system is secular. So those who want to send their children to religious schools should be able to do so and should be able to get funding for it, as long as there is the state education for secular way. So in such a system, I think religious minorities are compatible with a secular Turkish state, but only in these conditions. Thank you for your patience.